Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is me, your old pal Orpheus, with another edition of the Madness and Mayhem podcast. Yeah, it's a chance for you to put on the headphones, like I always like to say, and just kind of kick back, relax, and listen to me tell some stories, and maybe just kind of, ramble about life and what's going on with my life, maybe what's going on with your life. Who knows? This is kind of an evolving thing, and we'll see what's going on. So I hope you're doing well wherever you are today, whether it is day, whether it is night. Doesn't matter to me as long as you're coming by and sharing some of your time with me. That really does mean a lot to me. When you stop by and check out some of my content, I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, today, what I wanted to talk about was I went camping just a few days ago here. I went out there for a good little piece of time, and I was out camping at a local mountain that is close to us here. And it really was an interesting sort of experience, and I'll share that with you today. So, here's the thing. I grew up out in the woods, basically. I used to call myself a backwoods raver, like with the way that I would dress and stuff. Kind of a combination of flannel and big pants and stuff. Look, the fashion was a little different when I was growing up. Anyway, so I used to spend a lot of time out in the woods. I used to be a person who went motorcycling a lot, dirt biking, going out and, target shooting and hunting and stuff, and always spent a lot of time just kind of being outdoors, and I always loved just being out in nature. Well, as the years went by, I would go camping once in a while, and it was the full-on camping, like taking a tent out in the woods and digging a latrine pit and all that, unpleasant stuff that you have to that you have to take care of when you're camping, and cooking for yourself. And there's always something amazing about cooking some eggs and some bacon on a little griddle that you brought yourself, and you cook it on a fire yourself and all that stuff. I always loved that, just kind of frontier living almost, except you've got this like advanced nylon ripstop tent behind you that and $1,000 worth of camping gear and everything with you. But I always enjoyed going out into the woods and just kind of chilling out, right? Just the vibes were so nice out there. And back when I was growing up, there weren't distractions like emails and text messages and all that stuff. Of course, there were phones, as I was growing up here and there, but cell phones didn't really become a thing until I was. I'm going to date myself here in terms of age, but cell phones didn't become a thing mainstream until the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. And so they were really rare, really expensive, and did not give you things like text messaging most of the time. So you'd be out in the woods, and you'd really be out in the woods by yourself. And I did an episode a while ago talking about 3 o'clock in the morning. My dad used to always have a saying that he said, in the quiet of your tent, you got to figure out who you are. And the concept of that, I'll get back to that in a little bit, because that comes into play in the story as well. Now, as the years went on, I have this weird era in my life where I talk about in a lot of my videos where I just kind of started floating around, right? I just kind of started going out into the world, and I would live one place for about 6-8 months, and then I would just kind of screw off all of that stuff and then go live somewhere else, get another job, live there for 6, 8, 9 months, whatever, and then just rinse, repeat. And I did that for years, like a lot of years. So much so that because of my brain injuries and stuff like that, it's very hard for me to remember. But once in a while, once every few years, I would manage to get out into the woods again, go camping somewhere. Sometimes because I was homeless and needed somewhere to actually sleep. So, campgrounds and a nice tent, it's better than sleeping in your car most of the time, And so I would do that. But over the last 20 some odd years, it's become almost impossible to go out camping because I've been with a wonderful woman. We've been doing more focus on career things. And so moving around a lot, there's not really a chance to accumulate a bunch of camping gear and take care of stuff like that. Well, the last, I would say 13 years or 14 years now, we've been in the same place. And so I started to try to make it a priority again, but it never really came to fruition, right? And I never actually got able to get out into the woods again. And we had friends that were like, oh, you can borrow our tent, you can borrow our the sleeping cot, and all this other stuff. And I never really brought myself to doing it until about 4 years ago. So, 4 years ago, I was in a different place mentally. I was on different kinds of medications than I am today. I wasn't as focused on the anxiety as I was back then. I was more focused on just doing mood stabilizing back when I was taking care of that. I have something called schizoaffective disorder, which is a magical superpower combining both bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. So I have bipolar, that wonderful up and down roller coaster thing with your emotions, and then I also have schizophrenia because I hear music 24 hours a day. Unless I'm doing something where I actively replace the music, like while I'm talking right now, there is music going through my head, but I'm forcing it to be there so I don't get distracted, right? It's the Blue Danube Waltz, by the way. It's my go-to replacement song, but it's playing right there in my head as I'm talking to you. But I'd have to actively replace it by like listening to another piece of music. So anyway, I was focusing more on taking care of, just having the mood stabilizing going on. And so when you combine those two, they're called schizoaffective disorder, by the way. So anyway, back 4 years ago, I was more focused on taking care of, just not being on that roller coaster all the time. And so I do have severe anxiety disorder and PTSD and a bunch of other stuff. And at that time, we had a different car. We still have the car, but it's more of an around town sort of car. We have a van as well now. Yeah, we graduated to van life. Anyway, so I was like, honey, to my wife, I said, Mrs. Orpheus, I want to go camping this weekend. And she says, oh, okay, you want to go up into the mountains there at the local camping place? Yeah, it'd be nice to go out and just kind of spend a couple of days out in the forest and just chilling out. Well, I decided to get a camping cabin. The place that we go, or that, I went camping, has these cabins that you can rent. And they're kind of like, a hotel, except it's like the most basic hotel that you can get. It's literally like corrugated metal cabin with wooden panels on the outside. It's got a bunk bed, and that's it. It's got a table and some chairs, and that's it. So it's just like, you got to walk down the street or down the path in order to get to the bathroom and stuff like that. And it's a really nice place to go if you don't want to set up a tent and everything, because the last time I went was in October. And October when you're up in the mountains is it's very cold and very windy, and so I decided I wasn't going to set up a tent and try to, me versus elements. I didn't want it to be survival. I wanted to be an experience where I was out in the woods and just kind of by myself. And so I told Mrs. Orpheus, I'm going to pack up some of the stuff we have. I bought some new stuff like a camping cook set, a little rocket stove or whatever it's called, a camping stove that runs on, that liquid fuel and everything. And so I was all set to go, and I was so excited. I'm like, I'm going to get to go up in the woods. This is going to be great. I'm going to be able to just chill out and everything. Well, the car that we had, coming back to the car, you're like, why did you bring that up and go away from it? Well, the car that we had, the reason why it's more of an around town car is because it's an older car. It's a 2006 Chrysler 300, right? So decent looking car and everything. Nice for cruising around town, but trying to get up a mountain that has like a 15% grade on it, like that's pretty significant. And it was to the point where I had to like almost redline that car to get it up into the last couple of miles to get to the campsite. And so it was freaking me out. My anxiety, we didn't attack the issue of my anxiety at my therapist at that point, to the point where it was as effective as it could be. And neither of us knew that. We were just kind of going with, here's something to help you with the anxiety. Okay, well, it seems to be working for stuff. Well, for this, it was absolutely not working. And so I was almost literally in tears for just trying to get this thing to creep up the mountain. So that was a nice bad start for that. And so I get all, unpacked from the car and everything. I finally get to the cabin, and it's just beautiful and serene and quiet, and the pine trees are just kind of swaying, and there's that little whoosh of the air rushing by, just like and some birds and everything. And throughout the trip, I saw deer and bobcat and, just all sorts of, it's nature. You're going to see critters when you're out in nature. And so I did. But then that first night came. And I had with me my iPad and my phone and like a radio and all sorts of technology that normally I wouldn't have had going out camping before. And so it was like, all right, well, I have plenty to do. If it gets dark outside, it should be no problem. I'll just go outside, smoke a joint, and then come back in and watch something on YouTube. Well, the cell service up there at that point was absolutely abysmal. It was pretty bad. Like, I was getting essentially 3G speeds. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's like phones from the 2000s basically would get you about those speeds. And it's so like I couldn't watch YouTube videos, I couldn't download anything, I couldn't watch anything from like Netflix or anything like that. So suddenly I'm like, I didn't even bring a book. I was expecting to I'm just going to watch something off of YouTube, maybe, listen to a podcast or something. I couldn't even download a podcast, for God's sake. It was like, so suddenly I'm sitting in the forest in this lonely cabin. I'm the only person at the campsite, by the way. It was like, it's a kind of out of the way place, and it's really big, so it's kind of spread out. But at this point of the year, there's no one that was stupid enough to go camping except for me. It's like this county park. It's like a Bureau of Land Management kind of stuff, BLM. And so I'm out there, and it's like, okay, well, I got nothing to do. And I've smoked about as much pot as I'm going to smoke, for the moment. And I'm so like just out there, and I just kind of like, okay, this is horrible. And so I'm going to try to sleep. So I try to get some sleep. And I can't. And I realize it's only like 9 o'clock at night, and I've tried to sleep, since sunset. And like, it was October, so the sun went down like 5:30 or something like that. So I was like, oh God. Well, when you're out in the woods or you're trying to survive or whatever you're doing that's out in the wilderness, you kind of learn real quick that sunset to sunrise is kind of the longest part of your life that you could ever have. Especially bad when you have nothing to do except just kind of stare and like deal with your own thoughts. And, I started to freak out, and I'd text my wife, and I'd go, this is absolutely horrible. I can't do this. Is like, I'm freaking out at, every single noise outside, everything going on. Like, the radio didn't even pull in anything good. It was just basically kind of some static and a couple stations overlapping each other. And it was, late night stuff on like a Friday. So it's kind of, in the middle of nowhere. The radio is just kind of weird. It doesn't work quite as well as I would like, especially in that situation. And so there I am. It's creeping into the night. I am just kind of sitting there on my bed, and I had brought a hairdryer with me. They had power in this cabin, and I've addressed in another video. It's called "Don't Judge Me for My Hair Dryer Obsession." I'm a person that likes to use hair dryers for way more than drying your hair. Over the years, I've used it for like cooking pizza and stuff like that. Anyway, I use the hair dryer because the droning sound and the heat coming off of it really makes me kind of relaxed and everything. So even that wasn't working. I had the hair dryer going in there, and it wasn't doing a thing for me. It was just warming up the cabin. And I mean, it was nice because it was kind of cold outside. I mean, it was obviously really cold outside, but I was just absolutely miserable, absolute existential crisis the entire time. I had paid for 2 nights at this place, Friday night and Saturday night, and I could not wait to get out of there. I think I left like before Saturday night came up, and I had a day maybe that I spent out there because I couldn't do it anymore. I was by myself. I was miserable. My anxiety was through the roof. My meds for mood stabilizing were okay, but when you get into a stressful situation, when you just start getting your medications right, it can kind of throw you for a loop, and that's what happened. I freaked the hell out, and so I just had to get out of there. I came back home early, and I just kind of, it was so damaging to my psyche that I'm like, I'm not going to go camping for a really long time. Well, let's flash forward to just last week. And I'm there, and I'm like, well, let's go to a few weeks ago. And so I'm sitting here at home, and I've been having a rough time with feeling a little depressed, and a little bit like life has lost a little bit of its meaning. Don't worry, it's what happens when you get a little older. There are times when you just kind of look around and go, okay, well, this is life. So I was kind of feeling that way a little bit, a little midlife crisis, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. And I talked to Mrs. Orpheus again, and I said, I'd like to go camping again. And she said, you sure that's a good idea with what happened last time? I said, I think I'm doing better now. I've got better meds. I've got them dialed in a lot better. And I've got some anxiety medication that is absolutely fabulous. It works wonders for what's going on with me on those tough times. And so I'm like, okay, well, I think I can do it again. So I still had all the camping gear from 4 years ago. I figured, I could just reuse that stuff. It was gently used, if that. Used maybe to cook like 3 meals. I think it was like the dinner when I first got there, and then I made like breakfast and lunch the next day, and I noped out. So this time I was like, it's all gently used. So I've got all the stuff I need. I figure I'd go out in the woods and try it again. So I rented another camping cabin, and I had a nice full week to between the reservation and when I was going to go. So I just kind of slowly packed up all my stuff, and it gave me something to do for a week. It's like sometimes it's hard. I'm a house husband, so I spend all my time at home, and I just kind of chill out here all the time, and that can get a little monotonous. It can get to the point where you just kind of stare at the walls in your house. And I've decorated this house with as much stuff as I can decorate with right now to look around. I'm looking at stickers from a radio station that my cousin sent me. I'm looking at Doctor Who things that I've printed out, and like I printed out sonic screwdrivers and everything. I got it all over my house, but that can get a little confining once in a while. And so I decided I was going to do it again, and I got all ready slowly over that week, and the Friday morning came, and I got all set to go, and I get out, and and we had the van this time, so I'm like, I'm going to have no problem getting up into the mountains. We'll get to that in a second. And so I set out on the road, and I'm listening to my Sirius XM satellite in my car, and I got the chill station on, and just kind of jamming out, and I'm going to get out there in the forest, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm just going to relax. And I get going, and I get to that last couple of miles, and man, I don't know what it is. It didn't wreck the car or anything. It wasn't nearly as bad as it was before. The Chrysler 300 was so struggling, like to the point where I thought I was going to blow the engine. This one, like I had to jam on the gas real heavy, and it was rough, and I don't want to do it again for a while unless I rent a car or something and like destroy it going up the mountain like with that thing. But I got that last couple of miles, and I get up there, and I finally get over that last part, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I get all checked in, dump all my stuff, and this time I had made sure I called ahead, and I said, how's the cellular service up there? And he said, they put up a new tower a couple of years ago. I said, oh God, thank you so much for that. And so I'm like, okay. So this time I had my iPad and a radio and my phone, and I had brought a Kindle with me so I could read if I wanted to. I got 5 dozen books or something. I got every single Stephen King book on there. I've got every single World of Warcraft novel on there. I've got, all sorts of stuff. But one of the books that was on there was Henry David Thoreau's Walden. Now, you probably have read that book sometime along the way in school, or at least you tried to read the book. It is a very, very dry book, like to the point where it's got a lot of very long metaphors and like it's like Hemingway basically, where you at one point you're like, get to the point, right? So he uses a lot of really deep metaphors that he kind of talks about, like, when he's talking about the forest and he's talking about like the wildlife in a specific way, he's actually talking about parts of your psyche and everything. And the point of Walden itself is to kind of like find the meaning of life, right? Is in his central message, and I'm reading this right off of Google here, is his central message is to live simply, independently, and wisely. And I'm looking at that book on there and I'm going, it is weird, because I came out into the forest here. I came out into this place in order to kind of find myself and kind of get to the point where I feel a little better about what's going on in my life. Get a little perspective, right? And that's what Walden does. He goes out into the woods, into this cabin, and he's staring at nature. And the entire time he's talking about what it's like to live in such a simple place, as opposed to the hustle and bustle of modern society, which is funny because it was written so long ago. How long ago was it written? I can't even find out when it was. Anyway, very long time ago. Oh yeah, no, published in 1854, right? So he talks about there's a difference between society and being out so simple, and it's this like as they say, a voyage of spiritual discovery, right? Where he discovers himself due to being secluded and being forced to sit out there and look at nature and just be with himself. And this is where that 3 a.m. thing comes into play. The hardest time for anyone to face, no matter where you are, what you're doing, where you are in life and everything. The point in that overnight where it's about 3 o'clock in the morning and you're just like, you're left with just yourself, your own thoughts. Okay, so maybe you're up at 3 o'clock with your friends. I'm talking about a point in the night when you are by yourself, isolated mentally, right? The most difficult part of you to face can be that 3 a.m. self. And it was that in every single way the first time I went 4 years ago. I faced myself and I didn't like what I found. And the anxiety medication that I didn't have properly dialed in was not helping that. Now, Henry David Thoreau did not have the benefit of having anxiety medication. So what you get in that book is probably just a tiny slice of the freak out that he would have on a regular basis out there, because he had to learn all of this stuff about like himself and about how he interacts with nature and how nature interacts with mankind and how nature interacts with itself. And that's why it's such a hard book to read. It is very dry and very, like, you have to think very outside the box in order to understand what he's talking about. Otherwise, it just kind of looks like a nature documentary. Like, you're like, well, he's just talking about birds and stuff. Anyway, so this time around, I didn't read through Walden while I was out there. It's far too long for me to consume in just one sitting, like that, at least with my brain damage these days. I kind of forget sometimes what I'm reading about 3 paragraphs into what I'm reading, and then I have to go back, and it's complicated. Anyway, so what I found this time when I was camping is that I can still keep going, right? I can still keep doing things that I need to do, and I don't have to always feel like there's 0 point to things, because it could be worse. It could be a lot worse. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my belly. I have a nice, warm, comfortable place to sleep. I have an absolutely amazing wife. I have family now that I've discovered that's new, that I feel wonderful about. I have a good life. And I've lost sight of it a lot. And what camping allowed me to do this last time was to realize a little bit more of that, to give me more of a flavor for life. And, like I said, it's been kind of difficult to do content lately, and I'm considering taking a little break here coming up. And I may do that actually after this episode. I don't know. We'll see. I want to keep going, but I also want to take a little mental health break over the summer. But I'll keep you updated on that. Stay tuned to my channel and my community feed to get more on that. But that was my little rambling about going camping. Are you a person that likes to go camping? And if so, what do you like about it so much? Is it being out in nature? Is it being out with yourself? Is it being out there in the middle of the forest, just facing yourself and facing all of your demons? Or is it something you just like to reconnect and, like as they say, touch grass once in a while, right? And put your feet on the ground and connect with Mother Nature, man. Anyway, we'll see you in the next one here on Orpheus Plays on the Madness and Mayhem podcast. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Be good, do good, and treat yourself well, because you know what? You absolutely deserve it. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.